Good morning, everybody. We are in Judges chapter 7. I'm at the office because hashtag solitude bro. But whatever. Judges chapter 7. If you haven't been reading along with us, please check out our YouTube playlists, Old Testament and New Testament. You can find all the blah blahs, man. You can get caught up there with us, or you can read your own word on your own time. It's either way is cool. If you don't have a copy of the scriptures and you'd like one, the scriptures, it's the Holy Bible, just with a different translation other than the these and the thous of the King Jimmy. Okay. You can email me, admin, A-D-M-I-N, @bearindependent.com, subject line scriptures. Put your address in the email, please. And I don't need to know why you need one or whatever. Just tell me where to send it and I will give you one. Okay? Awesome. Praise Yah. Judges chapter 7. And Yerubbaal, that is Gideon. Gideon's a little easier. We're just going to go with Gideon. And Gideon and all that the people who were with him rose up early and encamped by the fountain of Harod, so that the camp of Midian was on the north side of them by the hill of Moreh in the valley. And Yahweh said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give Midian into their hands, lest Israel boast against me, saying, my own hand has saved me. So Gideon and his peeps are camped out. They see the Midianites. They're like, hey, it's time to go slaughter some Midianites. And Yah says, whoa, hold your horses there, homeboy. There's too many of y'all to undertake this maneuver because you're going to squash them. And then when you do, you're not going to give any credit to the Most High. All you broken A-word males out there are going to start posturing, yeah, that's right, we're Israel. We wiped out the Midianites. He's like, halt. We'll fix this. Okay? And now proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is afraid and trembling, let him turn back and leave Mount Gilead. And 22,000 of the people turned back, while 10,000 remained, meaning that Gideon started with 32,000 homeboys. Okay? And Yahweh said to Gideon, the people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and let me prove them for you there. And it shall be, that of whom I say to you, this one goes with you, let him go with you. And whomever I say to you, this one does not go with you, let him not go. Makes sense? So he brought the people down to the water. And Yahweh said to Gideon, everyone who laps the water with his tongue, as a dog laps, separate him from everyone who bows down on his knees to drink. And the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men. And all the rest of the people bowed down on their knees to drink water. And Yahweh said to Gideon, by the 300 men who lapped I save you, and shall give Midian into your hand. Let all the other people go, each to his place. And the people took food, and their shopharot, which is the plural of shofar, which is a trumpet made from a ram's horn. So they took all their dang trumpets in their hands, and he sent them away, all the rest of Israel, each to his tent, but held on to those 300 men. Now the camp of Midian was below him in the valley. Pause for a moment. Now I've seen a little bit of soft-handed, effeminate preaching on this before. And yeah, the Most High, Father Yah, is making a point here. Hey, you're going to take the Midianites with 300 men, not 32,000, lest you boast. But check this out. 22,000 of the 32,000, so well over 2/3 of them, didn't really want to be there anyway. They were filled with fear and trembling. And at the first opportunity to tuck tail and run, they did. Better to do that before engaged in battle than during battle, right? Because if you got 32,000, you commit 20,000 guys and 16,000 of them turn around and run away. We got problems, right? So, weeded out the people who didn't really want to be there in the first place from jump. Then we got 10,000 dudes left, and out of 10,000 dudes, only 300 make it. So that's 1 in 33 past the cut. What was the cut? They come to this opportunity to drink water, right? Bring them down to the water. Cool. Well, the ones who got down on their knees and put their face down in the water and were drinking had zero situational awareness. None. They were unconcerned for their safety of themselves or their brethren. The ones that didn't, that essentially took a knee, scooped up water, and lapped it like a dog with their eyes up and out paying attention, hey, those are the guys, if there's only going to be 300 of us to overtake the Midianites, those are the dudes that we want with us. The people with a bit of tactics, a bit of situational awareness that aren't just dilly-dallying, right? Because there's a difference between I want to be here and I'm capable of being here. So there's 3 different groups out of the 32,000 that started with Gideon. 22,000 of them were there but didn't want to be, okay? 9,700 of them wanted to be there but weren't really credentialed. They didn't really have what it took to be there. Well, they were weeded out. That leaves 300 men. That's 1 in 100. There's a freaking lesson there in today's life, for sure. 1 in 100. Well, God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. Amen. But He also proves them. Can you? Now that you're here, you've been called, He proves you. Are you going to walk into battle with your head down while you're getting a drink? Or do you understand, hey, this is important, keep your head on a swivel, because not only are you a danger to yourself, you're a danger to everybody else here in this entire operation if you don't take this seriously. Verse 9, and it came to be on that night that Yahweh said to him, arise, go down against the camp, for I have given it into your hand. But if you are afraid to go down, you and Purah, your servant, to the camp. And you shall hear what they say, and after that let your hands be strengthened, and you shall go down against the camp. So he, Gideon, went down with Purah, his servant, to the edge of the formation of 5s who were in the camp. And Midian and Amalek and all the people of the east were lying in the valley, as many as locusts. And their camels were as numerous as the sands by the seashore. They were thick up in there. And Gideon came, and see, a man was relating a dream to his companion, and said, see, I had a dream, and see, a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the camp of Midian, and it came to a tent and struck it so that it fell and overturned, and the tent fell down. And his companion, now these are the Midianites talking, so one dude's like, bro, I had a dream that this loaf of barley bread just came tumbling down and smashed into a tent, and it like completely overtook the tent. And his companion answered and said, this is none other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash, a man of Israel. Elohim has given Midian and all the camp into his hand. So his other dude is like, bro, this is Gideon. Like, this is not going to go well for us. And so Gideon, of course, is within earshot of this, and his servant Purah, they go down there. And Yah's like, hey, if you're afraid of how this is going to go, you just go sit on the edge of camp and listen to what the Midianites have to say. And what does he hear but this? And it came to be, when Gideon heard this dream related and its interpretation, that he bowed himself down, and he returned to the camp of Israel and said, arise, for Yahweh has given the camp of Midian into your hand. And he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put shofarot, the plural of shofar, again trumpets or horns, into the hands of all the men, with empty jars and torches inside the jars. And he said to them, watch me and do likewise, and see, when I come to the edge of the camp, do as I do. And I shall blow with the shofar, I and all those with me. Then you shall also blow with the shofarot round about all the camp, and say, for Yahweh and for Gideon. And Gideon and the 300 men who were with him, and Gideon and the 100 men who were with him, so his company, Gideon and the 100 men who were with him came to the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, middle of the night. And as they had but newly posted the watch, and they blew with the shofarot and broke the jars that were in their hands. And the 3 companies blew with the trumpets and broke the jars and held the torches in their left hands, and the shofar in the right hand for blowing. And they cried, a sword for Yahweh and for Gideon. And each stood in his place round about the camp, and all the army ran and cried out and fled. And the 300 blew the shofarot, and Yahweh set the sword of each one against the other throughout all the camp. They started killing each other. And the army fled to Beth Shittah towards Serarah, as far as the border of Avol Mecholah by Tabath. You know, over there in that place. They got a nice 7-Eleven there. And the men of Israel were called from Naphtali and from Asher and from all Manasseh and pursued Midian. And from all Manasseh, see, that's interesting because remember, Manasseh split, east-west Manasseh. But all of Manasseh showed up. Then Gideon sent messengers throughout the mountains of Ephraim, saying, come down to meet Midian and capture from them the watering places as far as Beth Barah and the Jordan. So what's happening now is Gideon and his 300 dudes surround this camp. And on Gideon's signal, they all take the torches out of the jars, light the place up in their left hand, and start blowing the shofar in their right hand. And the Midianites are like, what in the HE double hockey sticks is going on here? And it creates chaos. It's the middle of the night. They've just posted a new watch. Gideon comes rolling up. He's got the place surrounded, and they're like, we are doomed, okay? They are so spun up, the Midianites, that they're pulling their swords out of their sheaths and attacking each other. They don't even know what's going on. Well, that puts the whole camp to flight. The flight starts taking place. Now the Midianites are on the run. And so when it says in Gideon called Naphtali and Asher and all of Manasseh, he's calling in reinforcements. Hi, the Midianites are on the run. They're moving through your territory. Gather up your men, put your sword upon your thigh, and attack Midian. We've got them on the run now. So he's pulling external resources now into the fight. Okay? See, and then it says, then Gideon sent messengers throughout all the mountains of Ephraim, saying, come down to meet Midian and capture them from the watering places as far as Beth Barah and the Jordan. He's like, cool, well now they're on the run, they're being pursued, they're going to have to water themselves, right? They got camels, they got men. Ephraim, you get in the battle. You meet them there. So all the men of Ephraim were called and captured all the watering places from Beth Barah and the Jordan. And they captured 2 princes of Midian, Orev and Zeev, and killed Orev at the rock of Orev, and Zeev they killed at the winepress of Zeev, while they pursued Midian. And they brought the heads of Orev and Zeev to Gideon beyond the Jordan. They're like, hey, as proof, you like that? That's my decapitated head impression. It's a pretty good one though, right? You like that? I like it. I'm a little proud of it. I guess we'll do 8 too. Or 8 as well. Judges chapter 8. Maybe we'll title this something like Gideon Slaughters. Yeah, it's a good one for Bible study. And we'll just pause momentarily before we jump into 8 because we do such a disservice to ourselves as men and as a church, as an assembly, as the body of Messiah, to insist that men should only be compassionate and loving. And they certainly should. And I mean that in the travesty of saying that to be compassionate and loving, you must be a soft-handed, effeminate beta male. Negative. Not even a little bit. No. Because I can be compassionate and loving and understanding. But these things are not soft. I am not a beta. I am not overly concerned with making other people like me. I'm not that way. And the vast majority of the people, the men that we see in this Bible, are not that way either. Gideon was just some dude trying to make bread. Okay, literally, if you weren't here last week, literally, he was just trying to make some bread in secret so that it wouldn't be robbed from him. Okay? And the messenger of the Lord, Yeshua, shows up to him and is like, I choose you, Gideon. Gideon's like, what? Little old me? And he's like, watch this. First of all, go to your daddy's house, destroy his altar to Baal. He's like, oh, holy crap. He's like, yep, it's fixing to get serious. But Gideon is not some polo-wearing, sopping wet P-word beta male. You see what they're doing here, okay? And it does not mean that we shouldn't be compassionate, that we shouldn't be loving, that there isn't a time for diplomacy, that there isn't a time to receive somebody with love and compassion, that we shouldn't provide comfort to people. We absolutely should. But it does mean that occasionally you got to put your sword upon your thigh and go forth and do what the Father has commanded you to do. And if all we're breeding as a body of Christ is beta males who are afraid of their own shadows, what are we going to do when the Father taps us on the shoulder? And 22,000 of our men turn and run at the first opportunity given to them. And then another 9,700 don't even have their stuff squared away. They don't even know how to drink water without becoming a casualty. You see where I'm going with this? I'm trying not to get all fired up and start pontificating. But we do ourselves a disservice if we insist only that a Christ-like man is meek, because we mistake meekness for weakness without understanding that meekness literally means absolute power and authority controlled. It's control over absolute power and authority. It's knowing that I could utterly destroy you, but I stay my hand. Passivity does not create the power and authority that's required to be meek. Because if you can't utterly destroy something, you're not staying your hand. You don't have a hand to stay. That's not meekness, that's weakness, and that's not what we are called to. Yeshua himself was in the temple, flipping tables, beating people with a whip, grabbing unrighteous folks by the neck and chucking them out into the street. So remember the next time you see one of those cute little "What would Jesus do" bracelets, that it literally includes picking MFers up and throwing them out of the temple. We don't hear a lot about that in the Sunday church. And so I feel that we should embrace these characters throughout the Word. Whenever we see them with their masculinity and their God-given power and authority through the direction of the Most High and union with Him and the doing of His will, as examples of how we ought to be men in service to the Father. Not just the love your neighbor as yourself, absolutely. Not just love the Lord your God with everything you've got, absolutely. Not just meet the sinner in the ditch and pick him up and get him up out of it, absolutely. Not just go forth and make believers of all nations, absolutely. But also, sometimes you have to be a man, created in the image of the Most High. And we have examples of that all throughout this Word. And we do ourselves a disservice if we ignore those. Because I believe whatever is coming is going to require the type of men that Gideon was. The type of men that Yeshua, that Jesus was. The type of men that Samson was. Shamgar. Best name ever. Somebody make a Christian black metal band named Shamgar. Best name ever. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Judges, chapter 8. Shamgar. Yes, Shamgar. It's happening. Who's in? I'm in. I'll play drums. Look, I got us. I got the drum part covered. Judges, chapter 8. And then the men of Ephraim said to him, what is this you have done to us by not calling us when you went to fight with Midian? And they contended with him sharply. Ephraim was like, bro, you called Asher, you called Naphtali, you called Manasseh. How come you didn't call Ephraim sooner? Like, what's going on? And he said to them, what have I done as compared with you? Are the gleanings of Ephraim not better than the grape harvest of Abiezer? He's like, bro, I'm just Gideon, son of Joash, of the camp of Abiezer. You're Ephraim. Why you pissed off, homie? Like, are not the gleanings of Ephraim, like what's left over from your harvest, more bountiful than the entirety of the harvest of Abiezer? He's like, that's the point he's making. You're Ephraim, dude. It's like Bill Gates loses more money in a day when he drops it out of his wallet than I make in a day. Why is Bill upset that I didn't invite him to the local Rotary Club? You know what I mean? Elohim has given into your hands the prince of Midian, Orev and Zeev. And what was I able to do as compared with you? And when he had said that, their rage towards him subsided. And Gideon and the 300 men who were with him came to the Jordan, passing over, weary, yet pursuing. And he said to the men of Sukkoth, please give loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are weary, and I am pursuing Zevah and Salmunna, kings of Midian. He said, bro, we're hungry. You got some bread? Give us some bread. We're on the hunt. But the leaders of Sukkoth said, are the hands of Zevah and Salmunna now in your hand that we should give bread to your army? Are you gonna win? If you're gonna win, we'll give you some bread if you can actually overtake these guys. If you can't, you know, the implication there is if you can't, we're not wasting bread on you if they're just gonna kill you anyway. And Gideon said, because of this, when Yahweh has given Zevah and Salmunna into my hand, when I win, I shall tear your flesh with the thorns of the wilderness and with briars. And he went up from there to Penuel and spoke with them the same way. And the men of Penuel answered him as the men of Sukkoth had answered him. So he spoke also to the men of Penuel, saying, when I come back in peace, I shall break down this tower. And Zevah and Salmunna were at Karkor, and their armies were with them, about 15,000 men, all who were left of the army of the people of the east. So what's remaining of this army that's being pursued originally by Gideon and his 300, and now Naphtali and Asher and all of Manasseh and Ephraim, there's 15,000 dudes left, okay? All the army of the people of the east. Now those who had already fallen were 120,000 men who drew the sword. So they've already taken out 120,000 men. There's only 15,000 left. So they've been reduced almost 90%. Okay? It says all who drew the sword because they're numbering only those who were men of battle. Because it takes a lot to move an army, especially 135,000 men. Think of it this way. Like, there's always camp followers, right? People who cook, people who clean, people who whore, frankly, merchants, blacksmiths, people who deal with the horses and the livestock. Like, there's always, you know, it's 10 people in the handle of the spear to every one on the pointy end, more or less in a modern military. Okay, so there was 120,000 men who drew the sword that had already fallen. And Gideon went up by the way of those who dwell in the tents on the east of Nova and Yogbecha, and he struck the camp while the camp was at ease. So they were not set up to receive visitors yet. And Zevah and Salmunna, 2 kings, fled, and he pursued them and captured the 2 kings of Midian, Zevah and Salmunna, and shuttered the entire army. When he captured those kings, I read this as that shutter, that's it. The army was done. They're like, it doesn't say that they gave up, but shuttered the entire army. Think about like when you shudder. It's almost like a shock to you. It's kind of repulsive. Ugh. Well, they captured the last two kings and shuttered the entire army. I'm interested what your word says. Although, let's see what it says in the King James. Judges 8. Shabba-dabba-da. 12. And routed the whole army. Yep, that's what the King James says, and routed the whole army. So, similar. I mean, they lost their will to fight after those kings were captured. And Gideon, son of Joash, returned from battle from the ascent of Heres and captured a youth of the men of Sukkoth and questioned him. So he's going back to Sukkoth where they failed to give him bread. And they renditioned this poor kid, waterboard him, and they say, hey, what's going on in town? I don't know anything. Shut up, just tell me what's going on in town. I swear I don't. What's going on in town? Okay, I'll talk. And captured a youth of the men of Sukkoth and questioned him. So the youth wrote down for him the leaders of Sukkoth and its elders, 77 men. And he came to the men of Sukkoth and said, see, Zavah and Salmunna, about whom you taunted me, saying, are the hands of Zavah and Salmunna now in your hands that we should give bread to your men who are weary? He said, look, here's these guys. The guys I was going to go captured them. And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them he taught the men of Sukkoth a lesson. He whooped their asses, just like he said he would. And he broke down the tower of Penuel and killed the men of the city, just like he said he would. There's a Torah for this. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. You could make the argument now, well, just because they didn't help him doesn't mean that they deserve death. Who was it that told Gideon to do this? Did Gideon just get a wild hair up his hiney and just go take off on his own? Negative. The messenger of Yah, Yahweh Elohim, the Lord our God, the creator of the universe, said, Gideon, go. And Gideon said, yes, sir, I'm going. These men of Sukkoth and Penuel failed to assist the Father's anointed one for a time in the doing of the Father's will. Well, you reap what you sow. They sowed, and now they reaped their reward. Shabba-dabba-da. And he, Gideon, said to Zavah and Salmunna, how were the men whom you killed at Tavor? So they answered, they were like you. Each one looked like the son of a king. And he said, they were my brothers, the sons of my mother. And as Yahweh lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you. So he's questioning them at Tavor. These two kings of the Midianites killed Gideon's brothers. And he said, you know, if you hadn't done that, I'd let you live. But you did it. Gideon, by the way, you may notice, has transitioned from dude in a wine shed trying to make some bread so nobody steals it from him to dude who's about to get pretty serious about bloodshed, as if he isn't already. They were like you. Each one looked like the son of a king. And he said, they were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As Yahweh lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you. And he said to Yether, his firstborn, rise up, kill them. But the youth would not draw his sword, for he was afraid, because he was still a youth. Then Zavah and Salmunna said, rise yourself and fall on us, for as a man is, so is his might. So you think you're hot stuff? You come kill us. So Gideon arose and killed Zavah and Salmunna, and took the crescent ornaments which were on their camels' necks. So the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us, both you and your son. So Israel's like, Gideon, you're the best, bro. Great job. Golf clap for everybody. right? The best. So they said, rule over us, both you and your son, also your son's son, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian. But Gideon said to them, I do not rule over you, nor does my son rule over you. Yahweh does rule over you. And Gideon said to them, I have a request to make of you, that each of you give me the ring from his spoil. For they were rings of gold, because they were Ishmaelites, Arabs, Muslims, Ishmaelites. And they said, we shall certainly give them. And they spread out a garment, and each man threw into it the ring from his spoil. And the weight of the gold rings that he requested was 1,700 pieces of gold, beside the crescent ornaments and the pendants and purple robes which are on the kings of Midian, and besides the chains that were around their camels' necks. And Gideon made it into a shoulder garment and set it up in his city, Ophrah. And all Israel went whoring after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his house. That's kind of a problem. It became a snare to Gideon and to his house. They said, look at us, we're Gideon. Yeah, man. No, look at Yah, who made Gideon. You see the difference there? You worship the creator, not the creation. Let me repeat that, because a lot of people don't quite get that, even in faith. You worship the creator, not the creation. We don't whore after people. We don't idolize people. We don't idolize things, for sure. And while nature is absolutely wonderful and breathtaking and beautiful, it is something that just simply flows from the hand of a loving creator. It's indicative of his power and strength and authority and wonderment and amazement. But it's not the thing to be worshipped. We worship the creator of these things, not the things themselves. And so this shoulder garment that Gideon made was displacing the attention and the reverence that Yah deserved and putting it on Gideon, which is why it was a stumbling block. And Gideon made it into a shoulder garment and set it up in his city, Ophrah. And all Israel went whoring after it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and to his house. Thus Midian was humbled before the children of Israel, and they lifted their heads no more. And the land had rest for 40 years in the days of Gideon. And Jerubbaal, son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house, a.k.a. Gideon. And Gideon had 70 sons who were his own offspring, for he had many wives. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, also bore him a son, and gave him the name Abimelech. And Gideon, son of Joash, died at an old age, and was buried on the burial site of Joash his father in Ophrah of the Abiezerites. And it came to be, when Gideon was dead, that the children of Israel again went whoring after the Baals, and made Baal-berith their mighty one. Remember, this whole thing started with Israel whoring after Baal, whoring after false gods. How many times does the Father have to raise somebody up to punch you in the face so that you quit doing the bull crap that you're doing and serve him? And the moment that example falls away, you go back to your old bull crap again, like a dog returning to its vomit. Raise your hand if you're guilty of this. This is why in John chapter 16, Yeshua, Jesus says, hey, I gotta go, but I'm sending you the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, who shall convict you concerning sin, righteousness, and judgment, because you will see me no more. Yeshua won't be there for them to follow his example, so they need to have the conviction of the Holy Spirit, the Ruach, to get them to do the right things. Concerning sin, 1 John 3:4, sin is transgression of the law, 1 John 3 verse 4. Righteousness is Luke 1 verse 6, blamelessly walking in the commands of Yahweh. And judgment is Revelation 19 verse 11, when Yeshua comes back and just lays waste to everybody who is outside of the Father's will. Straight up, read Revelation 19:11. If you haven't lately, go check that out. And I saw upon a horse he who they called trustworthy and true. Right. And in righteousness he judges and makes war. And his eyes were a flame of fire. And upon his heads he had many crowns, and a name that no one knew except himself. Right? That soft-handed, effeminate Jesus lie that you've been told in church all the time, the next time Yeshua returns, it is a man of war who comes back. There is literally an army behind him, and he makes war with the entire world. Everybody who is outside the will of the Father is laid waste. Bird food. Literally, an angel shows up and calls out to all the birds on earth and says, prepare for the great supper of Elohim. There's going to be so much flesh to eat when Yeshua gets done with judgment that y'all are going to be falling out of the sky. You're so fat. Remember that. Revelation 19, verse 11, through the end of the chapter. But without those examples of righteous men, nations fall. Without examples of righteous men, nations fall. Thus, the children of Israel did not remember Yahweh their Elohim, who had delivered them from the hands of all their enemies round about, nor did they show loving commitment to the house of Jerubbaal, Gideon, according to all the good which he did for Israel. The end of chapter 8. How quickly we forget when we're surrounded by evil how to be good. Bless y'all. Shalom.